Hey, this is exciting. Episode 10. Blaine Birch, Mike Mylan, and you're listening to Nobody Told Me, the podcast for business owners who like beer, who like the bullshit, who like to talk about business. Right? So that's where we are. Hey, congratulations, episode 10.
Yeah, you too, man. This is like we're in double digits. That's pretty awesome. It feels like an accomplishment. I don't know how we got here so quick, but it's awesome.
Well, you know what? They told me I'd never amount to anything. So here I am. I've done 10 podcasts now.
So. There you go.
Yeah,
the pinnacle right here.
That's right. And I'll tell you, this podcast is actually kind of an example of what we're going to be talking about today, right? We're going to be talking about nobody told me I had to build a network, right? In order to survive, in order to thrive. Nobody told me I had to build a network. So, hey, you're part of it. You're part of my network.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's amazing, like looking back, how critical it is for business owners, how critical and also just how awesome it is. It's not just about selling or whatever. There's so much that goes into building a network. Like the benefits are just absolutely massive.
Absolutely. So, hey, what are you drinking today? What we got?
All right. So today I have it's got a really cool can. IPA.
You always get the best.
And it's from 88 Brewing.
Oh, sweet.
Sorry, wrong website, upside down. And it's called Danger Zone, which seems very Top Gun. So that's kind of fun too. So
yeah, there you go. And you know what? 1988. So that's how I say dates, when they're in the 1900s, right? Because my kids hate it. They go, why do you got to talk like that? And I said, well, back in 1988, when I graduated high school. So it's one of those things, it makes it seem like it's a million years ago, and it's at least 30, right? So
well, yeah, 30. Even 1999 sounds like that's what it should have been. Party like it's 1999. That's
right.
That's awesome.
Right. Well, that's how kids today look at us anyway. They think, oh, that's an old dude, right? I'm like, oh, back in the 1900s.
Exactly, so, yeah. Oh, and I should mention, so this, 88 Brewing is in Calgary, so just south of us down the highway. So another Alberta brewery, but they make some really good stuff. So I wanted to pump those guys a little bit for sure. So, and it's a West Coast IPA, so it's nice, clear one, as opposed to all these New Englands I've been drinking lately. So what do you got going?
I found this, right? It's a local brewery here in San Antonio called Freetail, right? But I love not just the can, but look at the name, Sold Out. It will make you doubt your soul, right?
Nice.
It's an IPA right here in San Antonio. The company's Freetail Brewing Company. So we're going to try them out today. That's
nice.
Yeah. You know what I try? I always try to get something Texas or something local. And so, hey, cheers. Cheers to number 10. Man.
Absolutely. This is a big one.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. That's good. Oh, yeah. That's got a bite. That's got a bite to it. So
nice.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about a network, right? Because when you first start, it almost starts when you're in school. If you really think about it, right? You start to build your network because, believe it or not, even people when I was in high school or college still weave themselves through my life.
Yeah.
And they're critical. They're critical, right? I mean, we've had business deals, we've had ideas, we've had shared laughs. They've introduced me to people. So a network is a collection of people in your life that, sometimes can help, sometimes can just commiserate.
It's true. And I'm thinking the same thing. Like when I look back at, school and high school and that, and you think, that was a long time ago. Yet there's people that I run into regularly that are in the tech industry as well. And I hop on calls with them regularly. And that network has continued to grow. And I remember early on in my career, back in my creative agency days, I was in a couple of professional organizations, Graphic Designers of Canada, and then Alberta New Media, and And I remember meeting people from there, and there was a number of trade trips we went on. And so we were down in actually your neck of the woods. We were down in Austin for South by Southwest one year, New York for Kids Screen. We actually were overseas in Hong Kong and China for a trade trip, all related to all this stuff, right? The lasting impact from all of that were the people on the trip. It's not even the people I met in Texas or whatever. It was all of these sort of colleagues that were in the group with us, that were in the trade trip with us, are, this is well over 10 years ago. And some of them going back probably 15 years. And they're friends of mine, but because we're in the same industry, I'm still interacting with them on a business level and a personal level. And that's where, like you sort of pointed out, it's not just straight business. It is most effective when there's this personal relationship and a business relationship. That's where you still know people 15 years later.
Yeah, I mean, it just always comes back around. I mean, and you think about it, it extends out of your business, which means you still have a car, you've got a house, so you're going to need, you're going to need somebody to fix your car. You're going to need somebody to work on your house. You know what I mean? So a network of people can get other things done outside of just in your own business.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's where, like, it's always a scary thing, a daunting thing to, kind of go through the yellow pages or whatever, or on the Google, the 1999 yellow pages, and finding people to help you with things. It means so much when you have that referral, when you have somebody that you've developed a relationship with and you trust. And it's amazing how that business is done. Like we just had a little bit of work done on our roof. Like we got a 20-year-old roof. It's these cedar shakes, and we had a company come out and I did a little research on them, climbed up, and they replaced some shingles and nailed stuff down and said, yeah, you're good for quite a few years. You're in good shape. And sure enough, neighbor comes walking over, kind of, hey, what you doing? And 10 minutes later, right after they're done our job, he's up on their roof checking it out. And it's just those relationships, and that makes such a difference. That's where you get it's this inherent trust and credibility that goes with him, just because he was doing our house.
You know what? The guy that did my garage with epoxy flooring, he got 6 more jobs up and down this. I'm in new construction, so everybody's like going, "Yeah, I want that."
Yep.
And he spent like a month, just right here in the neighborhood, putting up overhead shelving and things like that. It really does work that way. And the thing is that you're building a network all the time, and sometimes you don't even realize it. You don't realize that's what's happening, because either you've missed that opportunity, or you didn't recognize it as a bigger opportunity than what it really was.
Yeah, exactly. And I find a lot of times it's when the lasting relationships in your network are you hit it off with people on a personal level too. Those are the ones that years later you go back to a lot of times, because you have this it's not just like their role or their whatever. It's like, nah, I kind of like, kind of sit across the table and have beer with this person. And that makes a big difference. That's where you get lasting long-term networking opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about, when did you first think about, like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go out there and just start talking to people? When did you first start thinking about that?
I don't think I built a network in university, which in fact, it was really interesting. Two of my classmates from my undergrad, we graduated in 1996, both designers, both in creative industry. Now they actually do big interior, like restaurant design work in metal and wood and stuff like that. Ran into him a few years ago, and we were just actually over at their place the other night having dinner. And it's just like, it was so great to meet up with them. But I don't think I was actively feeling like I was building a network there. I think when I started to get it in my mind that I have to go out and do that is probably about a minute after I started my at that time, me, myself, and I agency, and realized I got to get some work. And then you have all these questions, and like, I don't even know what I'm doing half time. And so, I need an accountant. What do I do? Where do I get one of those? And that, I think, was the minute where it became from something I just sort of did without really thinking about it, to actively understanding that that's actually kind of important. And it grew in importance as I grew. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's just funny. I mean, here it is, you're building a network and you don't look at it that way, right? You just didn't. And here's where it hit me. My first job was a state trooper. So I come off of Army training, those type of things. I'd just come out of the Army, but there was a gap, right? There was a gap of time of about 6 months between coming from the Army and getting hired and starting the academy for the Highway Patrol. It was just a long hiring process, right? Background checks, those type of things. So I took a job. And this is 1993. Okay. 1993. And I took a job selling mobile phones. I mean, this is way back, right? You would have thought that it was the easiest sell in the world. It was not.
Yeah, when they were this big for, everyone's
or in a bag, right? Or in a bag or anything like that. And people were buying buckets of minutes, right? You're like, hey, you get 30 minutes for $30 or something like that. I mean, something crazy where you would never pay it now. But that's what I was selling, just because I needed a job, and the local mobile phone company hired me. So for 6 months though, I'm like going, hey, I need to figure out how to sell this. And guess who you go to? People you know. Exactly. You go to people you know, and you're like, okay, well, that's when that's when I knew that, oh my gosh, wait a second, these people that I've called friends, that I've drank beer with, that we went to football games, we did all these things in college, that relationship extends now into professional world, right? That was the first time I saw it for real. And I think it was much like you. You're like, hey, I need work, so I'm going to go out there and ask as many people as I can, if they want to buy a phone.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, if I fast forward to like 10 years even or more, when I started my business, to having a bigger business with office and staff and all the stuff we had, our primary way of getting jobs was all through networking. It was you're going back and getting repeat customers, and then you're getting that referral to the next customer, and you're building up a network. And we had a website up at the time, and we never got jobs off the website. The reason it was there is so that as we're talking with people and you got a new introduction to someone, they're going to go check you out, and then check and go, oh, these guys look legit. That's all it was, right? And that was, and rightly or wrongly, that was the only way really we got work, to a large degree. And but it worked really, really well. So it was just such an inexpensive, easy way to get work. Why not? It's the best way to do it.
Yeah. So, all right. So you get your group of friends. You already mentioned like trade shows, and that's kind of, you're going to see, especially like with us right now in software, you're going to get other vendors. You're going to see the same people, the same shows, and that kind of develops a friendship and professional relationship. Then the attendees. Where's some other places that you've went to kind of expand your influence, right? Expand your word and get known.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Like, when you mentioned trade shows, I don't miss being on the road and flying and stuff, but I do miss the people, because it's all the same bunch, and it's just fun. You just see hey, how you doing? But in a professional,
you know what's funny though? Hey, you see them for just the right amount of time.
That's true.
Just 1 or 2 days. Then you take a break.
And you're like, yeah, see you later. Yeah, it's I know it's true. It's a different, it's not the, especially because they're usually in other cities and everything else, and you see them a few times a year at these events. But we tried, we would do professional organizations, and it's really important to know where your clients are, to figure out where your clients are. And so we did some professional organizations that weren't a good fit. And you realize right away. One of them was like the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce. I'm like, sorry if I'm throwing you guys under the bus, but when we got there, we thought, well, this would be a good place to go meet people. And you realize, no, they're all too small. That's not where we meet the people that are running the size of businesses or managing that are our clients. And so it's like you cut bait right away. You go, this is great organization, not for us even a little bit. So then you start looking at where are other places, because there's ways you can go and you can ask for referrals or you meet through things like that. But you have to be able to make your own way sometimes. Like, you have to be able to build a network without waiting on other people. And so, getting into like on the board for Alberta New Media and all these other ones, that was also just a great way to go in and meet people and tap into all their networks. And invariably, they were all really connected as well because of who they were in the roles they had. And so those were a few ways outside of the traditional events that we would do it.
Yeah, you said something really important there, right? And knowing when to cut bait and not waste your time in an area that, is not going to produce. Now that sounds callous, right? It sounds like you're not worth my time anymore, Mr. Person,
Yeah.
right? But I think that's true. If you're really trying to expand your business, time is super important and you don't
Yeah.
want to waste it.
Yeah.
So,
I know I was at a professional event a few weeks ago, and it was the first one I was at since the whole COVID thing. Like, it was really uncomfortable, to be honest, because it's like, oh, I'm in public talking to people. But it was a reminder that, you're there, you're meeting people, it's enjoyable, but you're there to network and to make business, which means I think when I started, you could sometimes get caught in the corner talking with someone for an hour and like, I don't know how to get out of this. But you kind of develop those skills, and it's like, yeah, I met some really great people, but then it's like, okay, now I got to move on because I got to meet other people. And I actually appreciate it sometimes when the other person be like, I'm getting ahead of it. Great. Because, like it's like they understand, like they're trying to do the same thing here too. Like, we want to walk away. So by the end of the night, like, then I can walk away and go, man, like, I met a dozen new people. I've already had coffee with a few of them. I've got a bunch scheduled. Like, those ones that are like, that's a really good fit. You can tell you hit it off with them. They're good for what we're doing, like as a business sense as well. And you just like, great. You can make a lot of headway in a really short amount of time from that. And it all leads to more. Like, I guarantee you that out of the few people that I really followed up with and were like, that's a really good fit, it's going to expand out. And I'll bet you I can look back to that one event a month ago, a couple months down the road, and there'll be 10, 12 people probably there that has sprouted out of that.
yeah. All right. So I can't imagine this was ever you, but it could have been. I mean, I think I've been in this position, once or twice myself. Have you ever just felt awkward, uncomfortable? You're in this room, you don't know people, and I'm sure people listening to this podcast have been there, and you're like going, yeah, I don't even know where to start. So
Yeah.
what happens? How, have you had a bad experience, and then maybe how'd you fix it, or how do you overcome that feeling?
And the ones that are tough when you have to go to an event, like, and you're by yourself, right? And it usually is an event, and a professional event, a conference, a trade show, something like that. And it's one where you're kind of like, I don't know anyone here. And I remember back in my agency days, we would go to in Banff, Alberta. They have like Banff Television, Banff New Media, and they're kind of back to back 2 weeks like that. And at the time, we were pitching some television properties, and a lot of it we were pitching like a digital game or component that went with the property and all this stuff. So we had to go for this week to 2 weeks every year. And a couple of things that I learned going in is the first kind of couple of years, you're kind of like looking around and go, okay, well, let's hopefully meet someone. But fast forward a few years, and we would be setting up meetings beforehand, like doing the legwork and being much more strategic, setting up pitches, setting up meetings, anybody we knew, setting up a beer, setting up a coffee, to set the groundwork so that you just had stuff going on. But those are the people that you tap into. And suddenly it's like, yeah, there's a couple of people there, but you were arranged to meet with them. And then you could go and move through and make it really worthwhile, meet a bunch of people. Because there's nothing worse than I've been to some of those ones, you're standing around going, I should have set something up here. Like, I'm just sort of standing here, not making any headway here. And it's a really uncomfortable feeling, really, really uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I've been like that, and I've went up and and I tried to position myself in like little groups, right? There'd be groups of 3 people over here, groups of 3 people over there,
Yep.
and you go up and you it's really awkward, right? You got this new person, they don't know, they're involved in the conversation, you kind of come up to them, and it's like,
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling, and especially if they don't acknowledge you, then it's even weirder because then you're just kind of a creep. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they don't acknowledge you, to me, like, I'll be honest with you, like, I think 10, 15 years ago, that would really sort of bother me. But I think, like, being at so many of these bloody startup events, and it's all like, you got to make hay in that, you develop a really thick skin a little bit. And so now I could walk up to someone, if they don't acknowledge me, I'd probably be like, oh, seem like a bunch of assholes, and then walk away. Like, go to the next group.
Yeah.
But I do remember there was one conference I was at in Arizona. We're down there in the winter, and there was some event I went to and thought, oh, this might be interesting. Went to an event, and I remember, you know, you kind of meet people. There's always the happy hour at the end of the events or whatever. I chat with a few people, and I was walking out, and I'm leaving, literally leaving, and I saw 3 or 4 people standing around a little table, and I don't know why. I just kind of, you know, like, I'm here anyway. So I kind of stopped, walked up, and said, you know, hey, how you doing? And started chatting with them. You know, and then we ended up, like, the whole bunch, like, going for dinner, sitting on a patio, getting to know all these people, exchanging stories, and it was just ended up being this really great group, right? And it's just, you just sort of have to put yourself out on a limb, I think, at times, and you know, you get lucky sometimes, right?
Well, like, you know what I mean? And people ask me this, how do you get this started? So, you know, over the last 10 years, I've built kind of a brand, right? I mean, you know, people kind of know you, and they seen you speak, or they read your books and those type of things. They go, how did you even get that started? I mean, how do you go from nobody knows you at all to now, you know, people go, oh yeah, I've heard of you. And it's one trick that I used over and over and over again at every event. And it's the simplest thing in the world to do. And it was smile. And I said, hi, I'm Mike.
Yeah.
That was it. That was it.
Yeah.
That was it. And I did that over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. And it is amazing how far smiling goes. It's unbelievable. And I'm not, I think I'm, like, naturally kind of smiley, but I have to probably be conscious of it, right? And it's so funny because my wife's like, she smiles at everybody all the time. She like, everybody just gravitates towards her, right? And I remember one day she said, she goes, you know, people, we go for bikes, she's like, people are so friendly, they're all smiling at me and that, and like, no one smiles at me. And what I realized is because I'm riding along, like, get out of the way, like I'm coming through.
Yeah.
And she's going by everyone, kind of smiling and waving at everybody. Yeah. And they react right back to her immediately. Like, it's probably like the number one networking tactic on the planet is literally smiling and just introducing.
Just to smile. Show your teeth and smile. You know, so and I learned that as a trooper, believe it or not, because when you put on the blue suit with the leather and the hat and the gun and all that type of stuff, and if you're not smiling, nobody wants to talk to you.
Yeah, I could
nobody. I mean, not even your neighbors. Like, I'm talking to him.
Yeah.
But they're always, because I started making fun of my neighbors. I'd go, hey, you know, is there anything you want to clear your conscience of today?
Nice.
But I would do it and laugh, because, you know, I was trying to break that mold of, you see this, it isn't a bad interaction. There are times where you have to be a bad guy, right? You have to be a very serious person, but for the most part, it's still just me. Right. So I learned to smile, and people tend to talk to you a little bit more, especially in investigations and things like that. I called it the Columbo technique. You remember the show Columbo?
I do remember it. I'm old enough to remember that.
Yeah. Where everybody just thought he kind of bumbled around. You got this smile, and, you know, all of a sudden all these words start piling around. You go, hey, wait a second, just one more thing. When you said this, did you mean?
Yeah.
And then you start piecing together the investigation, and it was so much easier to have those type of conversations with a smile, and it didn't feel as adversarial.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so a smile does break down barriers. I would think.
Yeah. It's a good tactic. It's amazing to me how much networking has changed. Like right now we're doing a round of fundraising. So I have to, but that, if you don't have that network, you have to build it. You have to actively go out and find it. Right. And cold calling is not a very good tactic when you're raising money, which means you have to get those introductions that can go just a mile. You know how far it goes. So it's been really different. Going out and building this network, because I got to talk with 50, 60, 70, 100, whatever people. A lot of them probably outside my network. And so you have to be very active and go out and meet those people. But just this other little tip that makes a massive difference is asking for an introduction to someone and explaining what you're looking for. We're doing this type of round. I'm looking for this type of investor. Do you know anybody? And it is amazing how many of them are like, yeah, you know who you need to know. And I'm sure you get this all the time. It's these email like introductions, just constantly making introductions, getting introductions. Calendly's the best invention ever. I don't know if you use it, but
dude, I use it for everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's different.
And if you remember right, I made an introduction to you from one of my banking friends.
Yes. And I had a great conversation with him. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Did you? I didn't know if you guys ever connected or whatever, but yeah.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Hey, he's working on something super interesting. It's not called an ATM, like automatic teller machine. It's something else that is an AI teller machine, right? And it's like you can actually, they're doing away with tellers, and there'll be like a bank of like a calling center somewhere where, you pull up to the ATM and you want to talk to somebody in the bank, you can talk to them at the ATM, but it'll also have an AI generated thing that can answer most of your questions without a person, right? Just your general stuff. Yeah. So, and Nick Schuster, the guy I introduced you to, is working on deploying those right now, and it's a fascinating read. I'm trying to catch myself up on it, because you know me. Anytime that I think it's the future, I'm gonna be right there. Like, what is it? What is it? Because I want to know about it and be part of it. And that's just being interested in other people. That's another skill that you actually have to have. Is, oh my God, you're working on something that's really interesting. Start asking them questions, get them to talk, because that's a skill I try to use with other people. Is I want to give them enough about what I do that they ask me, no shit, how do you do that? Right. And that gets that conversation going.
And that's one of the skills is probably like the number 3 skill that you really have to focus on is asking questions. You get like, that's how you really engage people. Ask them about themselves. That's where you learn what they're about, where you can fit. And it's a skill. And it's funny because I actually have, because sometimes I get into that talking with someone and they just sort of talk at you for an hour. Right. But I've got a couple friends.
Hate that.
Yeah, exactly. And I've got a couple friends, and one in particular, he is so good at asking questions that it's like, after a while you're kind of like dodging, because you're kind of like, I want to find out like how things are going with you, but just ask questions. And he follows up, and you're like waiting for this gap to go, all right, I'm turning around, asking him a question, because he's so good at it. Right. He's so natural at it. And it
doesn't feel that way until you think about it. It doesn't feel until you think about it. You're like, I'm doing all the talking here, right? And I try to deploy that, in a lot of conversations, there's a 70-30 rule, right? Where I'm going to allow the other person to speak about 70% of the time. And I'm trying to be conscious of that, so I don't dominate the conversation.
Yeah. And it can be tricky, and it's uncomfortable both ways in a way, if you're just like answering questions the entire time, or if someone's talking at you the entire time. It's really tricky, and you do have to have that balance, right?
But and here's the thing, you're in a terrible conversation when even the questions are forced, right? You have to think about I have to ask this person a question because this conversation is terrible.
Yeah. And that's, it's funny because it's for people that don't like network probably. And I don't know if I'm like supernatural at it. I think I've developed the skill. I think that's what it is. So people out there, you can develop the skill, because I know some people are just naturally just talking with everybody all the time. And I think I had to develop it a little bit. I was probably more on the quiet side or whatever, but not all conversations are great. And so if you're kind of new to this, you're like, I'm going to go to some event, I'm going to start networking. And it's like, don't get discouraged if the first couple are duds, because sometimes you just end up in a kind of a boring conversation that goes nowhere, and it's tricky. You got to find a way to get out of it, and don't be shy. Just go, nice meeting you. I got to go chat with someone over here, whatever, right? In a
I wonder
nice
what
way.
I wonder what the air over there tastes like.
Yeah, exactly. It's the one of the easiest one is to go, I'm just going
I
to
need a
go and
beer. I need a
grab
beer.
another drink. Yeah, it's a great way to exit a conversation.
Yeah, that's fine. All right. So it used to be you had to have three people in your network, right? And it's not that way anymore. But I ask this question in a lot of seminars I do. Like, who do you go to for advice, right? Who do you go to for advice as part of your network? But you used to have to have a banker, an accountant, and a lawyer, right? And then in 2008, when the bankers burnt the world down, people don't use them as much. They don't look at them as part of their network as much anymore.
Yeah, true,
Right.
very
So,
true.
but matter of fact, in my stats from asking that question, they don't rank in the top three. They're still in the top 10. They're ranked seventh behind other. Other ranks.
Nice.
I'm going to talk to anybody in the world about a banker.
Yeah, other.
Right,
That's
so
awesome.
who do you think is necessary, right? Who should be on your network? You have to have that person.
Yeah, like for me, and I think if you're an entrepreneur of any type, but especially if you're in like an innovation space or a really high risk endeavor, you want to have some advisors. And I'm not talking about the accountant and lawyer. I'm talking about people that know your industry, know fundraising or growth or whatever those metrics are. And you can go to them regularly. And I have I'm fortunate. I have a mentor team through a program through the university I went to, and I have advisors. But they're different things that I know that I want to go to them with. Right, like I want to talk about this, or I have a problem with this. Here's where I go. So it's maybe a little more generic than you're sounding, but like I have people that I know from my industry, like who do I go to talk about this, right? To talk about that.
Right.
But you must have a list. You're thinking something else here. I know that. So
no, it's like I think that's right. I mean, because you've got some people you're like, when there's some specific. Here's the way I look at people in your network, right? And I'm not talking about customers now. I'm talking about just people that can help you in other ways. Yeah. I think that the people that are in your close circle are people that cover your blind spots, which means, they're better at things than you are. Like I kind of lean on that guy if I need advice, if I want to talk about, if it's marketing, that's not me. I have to go talk to somebody. Yeah. Building a website. If it's, even some of the more complex financing, I have a network of banking friends, and I'm calling somebody that does that work every day. Yeah. To be able to get it. So I think maybe that's it. Maybe that, when you look at yourself, where are the gaps in my game, right? Because I'm good at this. This is where I would consider my best, effort, my best performance is here. Yeah. In these other areas, I need help.
Yeah. And what's interesting as you talk about that is true. Like you have to figure out where your gaps are, but I also have some go-tos, like basically like you and I too, that it's, as an entrepreneur, you need to sometimes sit down and talk with another entrepreneur about just the battle, the war. And it's not looking for a specific piece of advice or like about marketing or this or that. And like a great example is a good friend of mine that, we get together every, couple months, whatever. And I still remember the one day he walked in and he just looks at me and goes, "Am I talking you off the ledge, or you talking me off today?" And it was like, yeah, that's just what it is. Right. And it's funny. Just, there's no specific outcome. It's just, sometimes you need to talk with another entrepreneur that's going through the same fight that you are, and just having a good chat. And it doesn't have, you learn stuff in spite of the conversation, but the conversation you're not going for one piece of information really. Right.
Well, that's funny because here you and I are, right? I mean, pandemic cash flow author, I wrote a couple of books. My brand name is Cash Flow Mike. We never talk about We never talk about cash flow, right? It's
Yeah.
because there's so many other things. I'm like going, yeah, he gets it. Yeah, but there's so many other things that you do that are
Yeah.
interesting to me. And that's how I'm expanding myself. I'm like going, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, he gets cash flow, but he has other things that I really respect and I want to get from him.
Yeah. And it's just like, of course, is an incredibly important part of business. Someday we'll sit down and chat about that. But I think part of it is we've both like lived it, and you're talking about it all. It's like, that's almost like the day job, right? But it's yeah, some way of talking about, but it's being in business, the so many of the things that, kind of lead to cash flow problems. It's all of these other conversations we're having. It's all of
That's
these
right.
things. And they're never ending. Like here we're at episode 10, and it's like we'll be at episode 100 and we're still going to have more conversations. Like you're never going to run out of things that you're battling, right?
Well, this show has become more about soft skills, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Not mathematical analysis, not mechanical, things, like if the ratio is this, do that. These are soft skills that we do every single day around that process.
Yeah. And you know what? It is oftentimes the hardest. And it's like, and you can go, like you said, you can go to a lawyer or an accountant. They can deal with the checks and balances and the numbers and the this and the that and the contracts. The soft skills of how you build business, how you close a deal. Like, I don't even know if we talked about that, how you close a deal, how you, like what we're talking about, how you network, how all of these things, man, they're staffing issues, everything are so incredibly important, and they're so nuanced, and it's hard. And I think you learn a lot from, it's not a checklist, it's stories and experiences. And as you gather enough of them, and you start to experience things yourself, it starts to make sense. This interesting thing is when you move from knowing to understanding, I think is what they call it. Like people tell you something and you're like, okay, I've heard that a million times. But there's a point where it's like, oh shit, I get it. Like I totally get it. I understand it to my core, right? That's a different sort of place, right?
All right. So when you said that, it brought to mind a shift in my networking that just occurred this week. A shift that hadn't been there, right? Because I've always been the type of guy, I'm gonna go out to an event. That's how I kind of, I talk to people, I'll drink a beer with you, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Teach, people come up to you all the time. But here's what happened post-COVID. I've never been good, and we just did the social media stuff. I've never been good at social media, whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, how to do ads, how to do, just post, how to brand yourself. But this week, we're opening up a brand new high school just down the street from me. Brand is beautiful. You talk Friday Night Lights, it's going to happen right there. I mean, They're calling it a Coliseum. You've heard about Texas football. I mean, this thing is amazing. Yeah. They have an outdoor pool at the school, tennis courts, softball. I mean, I just want to go down and tour the facility.
Yeah.
And I've walked the track and I've stood on the football field. But here's the thing. And my stepdaughter's going to go there next year. So I bought gear, I bought a shirt, Piper Warriors Athletics, bought a hat because I'm going to go down there. I bought a golf cart so I can go down there and tailgate and,
nice.
and be part of it.
Yeah.
But in order to understand what was happening there in athletics, I went to Facebook and joined, the athletic Facebook group, and then got invited after I got invited to, then I joined the boosters. Then got invited to this private group called Tailgating.
Nice.
And what happened was all of a sudden my network expanded just because we had a common interest of that football. Now what's going to happen? I anticipate happening because now I'm starting to know people I didn't know. I still haven't met in person. And that's where, after COVID, that's kind of where we're at is, how do you meet people? How do you network if there's no trade show? How do you if we're not getting together? It happened organically in just a common interest that I know will carry over to some type of business professional something, right? Because I want to be at the football game. These guys want to be there. We're going to meet somebody somewhere that's going to open up another door. I mean, have you had some experience like that? That just happened.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just happened.
Yeah, I'll tell you, like I was, well, literally 2 nights ago, I was doing our fantasy football draft, and I'm sure it'll go as badly as every other year for me.
Mine's next week.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, but it's funny, like my fantasy football draft started probably back with those guys I went to Austin with 15 years ago. And then
Yeah.
through meeting this one and then that one, and then they started another league over here. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll go over there. And it was really kind of funny because it's just a couple of years ago with this new league I'm in. I went to one of the drafts and I walk in and here's a guy that owns a creative agency in town that I know really well. I'm like, how, what the hell, what do you do here? Well, it's because a bunch of the guys have been friends forever, it's sort of thing. And so now suddenly I'm in this sort of other group that you get to meet all these people and then people they know, and some of them are business owners and from a football draft. Right. And
Yeah.
it's when you brought up tailgating, like, it's funny because that is again, like an opportunity. We don't have that up in Canada, not to any sort of level like you guys do down there. And I remember going to my first tailgate at a University of Arizona in Tucson football game. And so like we were in Phoenix, like Scottsdale, but I have friends up there and they're from Tucson. Like, you got to come down and we go tailgating. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And so that now you'll, like, of course this will be native to you, but for anyone out of the Canadian or somewhere else, this is how it goes. So we show up there and, being a Canadian, I think we pull out a lawn chair, we sit down and crack a beer and you sit and chat. And they're like, yeah, no, we got to set the tents up. And these big 10 foot by 10 foot tents. I think we had 4 of these things. Right.
Yeah.
And then they're setting up, they got tables and barbecues and a TV and all this stuff. And it wasn't even the fancy ones. And then all these people come in. And so, but you get to meet all of these people. And there's something that is different about America. Like the Americans are so friendly. And it's just different. It's like compared to being in Canada here, where everything is just a little relaxed. It's different down there. Block parties, everything. It's like, everything's 1,000 times what we'd probably, kind of pull off here in Canada. But that's where you get to meet all these people, right?
Well, here's what's happening. Remember, I'm new construction, new neighborhood. We've already named our area of the neighborhood as Lower Hastings, right? Are you part of Lower Hastings? It's Hastings Ridge, whatever. You part of Lower, and we're going to have a logo. We're going to have a Facebook page just for our little neighbors. I mean, but it's that common interest. And I'm like going, you have to get off of Netflix and go talk to people about other things that you like, right?
Yeah.
And build that network around you, because that helps other people build your business, even if they can't help you specifically. Like maybe I won't buy, dry run, but I know 10 people that might,
Exactly.
Right? It's a crazy thing, right? The way that works.
And it's easier in person. It's very possible to get meetings hooked up on Zoom and things like that. But it is easier in person. It's a different experience. And like, I even think to, like, so many of our friends in Arizona, we go down, we'll go out as a group and everything. And you start thinking back and like, well, some of them were like, they were started with probably some neighbors of ours, but get to meet a whole bunch and really hang out with them at this ridiculously over the top Christmas block party where they had like full PA system for bands and a food truck and like but that's where you get to meet all these people and really get to know them. Right. And that's where you start to, again, you develop those you develop networks with your neighbors. Our neighbors around here, I know all of them. You develop a network. You don't even really think about it. You develop this network, and it's amazing who knows who and how you can work through. Right?
Yeah. Have you ever had a neighbor you didn't like?
Oh yeah, we've had like over the years, every once in a while we get ones, and fortunately a lot of them are fairly transitory, like they weren't around too long, but you're just like it Yeah. And that's the other side of a network is it's almost like a bad client leads to a bad client. It's like, it's just like you're not developing a good network through the wrong
That's
person,
right.
right?
Well, and it's so funny, right? Because it's always just the one thing. You don't know these people very well, we'll say, and there's that one thing you're like, oh, yeah, you're out, right? It's like an
Yeah.
instant judgment. You're out. And so every other thing that person does, I don't care if they have their family over for Christmas. You're like, oh, that's too many cars in the driveway.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying it begets, right? If the
Yeah.
one little thing just kind of compounds, it's the same thing in your network, right?
Yeah.
If people, are poison, they bring poison into the network as well.
Yeah, just stay away. Yeah, there's find your way out if they're not the right people. And it's not like the other thing is it's not networking isn't about, like you said, it's like they don't have to be a customer of yours. They don't really like, but they can, if you develop that relationship and you get along with them really well, it'll lead to those. It just naturally, because then they start going, hey, I know someone that needs this or could use help with that, or whatever it is, or that stuff comes up. So it's a lot about, to me, the sort of the quality of the person, the quality of the relationship, and maintaining them. That's the other thing. Like, maintaining those relationships is so important. And that's where, like you said, the trade show crowd will now be in a year or two off the trade shows. It's like, oh, hopefully we start seeing these people again. But there these other ones that I actively make time for, and I'm keeping up with, and booking just a Zoom call or whatever every few months just to make sure that I'm keeping up with them, right?
Yeah. So, all right. So you brought up something there about, maintaining that contact, but here's something that I've not struggled with, but I've questioned on how to do it better.
Yeah.
All right. So I was on the faculty at LSU, right? The graduate school banking. I did, small business banking course. But as the faculty group is a small group, there's only probably 30 of us, right? That, in this graduate program, but there are thousands of bankers that go through it.
Yeah.
But at the faculty level, there's CEOs of banks, there's advisors to the White House. There's all of these power players, right?
Yeah.
Right. That really run things. That you're now sitting in a room, the hospitality suite for just faculty, and you're drinking beers or cracking snacks and whiskey with them. It's a humbling experience, but you don't want to be overwhelmed by it, and then you don't want to pester them after. So it's a balance of, okay, they have big jobs, they can help me in other areas, but I don't want to be a pest. I don't want to be a gnat on that person, right? So, but what would you suggest on how to approach that? I'm already being cool, and I'm already being cool. I'm already having a casual conversation. We're talking football. We're already talking friends like we would right now. But then transition that to hey, I need your help.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, sometimes if it's just you need a hand, don't be afraid to ask at times, because they may be like, yeah, sure, I'll help you with that, right? But to me, I think the best tactic a lot of times is, especially if you found someone that you kind of like, we're talking, like you said, talking football, I really like this person. Take it like I always try and do a follow-up, because it's like the first meeting or the first time you kind of, yeah, but do you want to do coffee next week, or do you want to do a beer? Do you want to grab a lunch or something like that? And you get them one-on-one, and again, more of a social situation, and you get to know them. And it's one of those, like, if it's going to work, eventually it'll kind of fall into place. But my go-to a lot of times, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, is stay interested in them as a person, and having a great conversation, develop that relationship. That's always in my mind, is develop the relationship. And at some point you'll be comfortable asking them for whatever, for an introduction or whatever. And at some point you're hoping you can return the favor for them. But there, like you said, there are times where it's just like, man, like, no, just don't be afraid to ask, because you're not going to get to that next step, right?
Yeah. Well, and I've tried to do that. But it happened the other way just a little bit, and it's only happened once, which is Dr. Rex, who teaches technology at the graduate school, went to Chase Bank and told them about our stuff. When I was a Fitograph, it was telling about our stuff. I'm like, man, that's a really powerful recommendation that a doctor who teaches at LSU and Colorado and the Pacific, Coast Banking School, went to one of the biggest banks in the world and said, hey, you should talk to Mike about his stuff. I don't know how much more powerful recommendation. And that only came about from that personal interaction that he and I shared. And it seemed like we were always on the same flights, always on the same, schedule together. So I was always around him. And it helped. And I just never pestered him, and it came naturally.
Yeah. And the thing is the most in a case like that. So it feels like let them come to the conclusion, like have a great conversation with them. You develop, working, just developing the relationship, you care about them. And when they ask about what you do, like, don't drone on, tell them what you do. And if they make the connection and they like you, they're going to go a long way for you. But, there's a lot of, like, I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of sales I think we've made, especially recently. We'll get on a call with the CFO and I just want to learn more about, like, what do you guys do? How do you do that? How do you offer that service? Because I want to know, and I want to know how they do all, like, what they do, because when I start to hear the challenges, then I'm like, back in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I think we can help with that. Right. And then eventually they're like, well, what do you do? Well, I do this, but what do it's always back about them, always back about them. And then at some point they're almost banging down your door to find out what you do.
Yeah.
And it's like, in spite of myself, I'm like, no, well, yeah, here's what we do with a customer or whatever. Right. But it's asking questions and keeping the conversation on them, because you have so much you can learn. And if it ends up being a fit, they'll probably find a way to find out, like, to ask you, and they'll find a way to recommend you or whatever.
Yeah. So what have you done to scale a network, right? Which means it isn't just a one-on-one connection. I'm going to these events. I mean, how do you scale it out? You're like going, I want to expand by 100, not by 10.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Like, asking for introductions is a big one, because you can go, like I said, like this one event a few weeks ago, I'm sure probably 3 or 4 people I'll catch up with, and I bet you it turns into 15, 20 from that one little thing. So it is about, like, asking, like, just find, like, not like, hey, can you introduce me, but, like, tell them what you're doing, and, hey, do you know anyone that might be interested in this, or they could help me with this, or whatever. And you're sharing back and forth, right? I'm like, hey, because I'll do that all the time. Like, who you need to know. They start telling me, like, you got to talk with so-and-so. You got to talk to so-and-so. And getting on email immediately and doing those introductions, because I want them to remember. First of all, I want to help them, but I also want them to remember that, like, I hopped on right away and got that introduction for them or whatever.
Yes.
But there's something else that the friend of mine recommended to me. And it's top of mind, because it was my first time today. There was a site or a tool or whatever called Lunch Club. I don't know if you've heard of this.
Yeah.
He said, try this Lunch Club, because I've met so many interesting people. All right. So it's a system where you go on and you kind of say who you are and what you're about, and put a little bio on and what you're kind of interested in. And then you basically book time on a calendar, and then they match make to have a 1-hour conversation with just somebody that, according to probably their AI and stuff, seems like might make sense. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, I'll try it. Because he said, he goes, I've had so many great conversations. He goes, really, I've had no duds. They've been all fun, right? And so I got a conversation today, just some guy. I'm like, this is great. And he ended up just being so interesting, and a really, and he's an expert on pricing. And so I'm like, man, I think I want you on, like, our other podcast, or maybe on one of our webinars, because you just, like, have a really clear, interesting way of explaining this stuff, right? And so that's a very active way, especially in kind of if you're working remotely or whatever, there are active ways to go out and meet those people and get those. It's not the same as meeting people in person, but it was really interesting. So I'm like, that was pretty fun. I think I'm gonna start booking more of these, right?
That would be so weird for me, right? To be matched up, right? With another individual and have that. It would just be weird for me. I think this is where, I'm like, I don't know if I would do that or not.
It's kind of weird, except for as soon as they pop on, and it's almost like what you would say at a conference. It's weird until they pop on and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And also like they're just chatting with them. And I'm sure there's times where you're like, this is not a great conversation or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can always cut it short and say, "Hey, I got to hop to my next thing." But I think the people on the call they're also kind of inquisitive and they want to meet other people and learn about stuff. That's all really what it's about, right? And
now, do you exchange any like text, email before that, or it's just like it matches you guys talk?
I think it matched us and just made a calendar invite, but I did have to email them ahead of time because I didn't have my thing set up right, and it double booked me, and I'm like, oh, I had it technically not set up right in the calendar, so I had to reach out to him with just a short email. Hey, do you mind rebooking for sure, let's do this, right? But we do that on LinkedIn a ton now, where we're just want to meet people and network with them and talk with them, and we're setting up meetings with basically strangers all the time. We're just kind of like, yeah, here's what I'm kind of about. If you want to chat, here's my my Calendly link or whatever. And I've had a lot of really great conversations. Our entire team has learned so much and had all these great conversations with people from LinkedIn. And what was interesting is LinkedIn is it's just stuff. Like there's a feed and there's stuff going on. But how often do you actually like meet and get in conversations with people that just want to chat with you? Like you're just having a conversation. You're not like, it's like, no, I'm not trying to book a sales call with you. Just
now, do you use like the LinkedIn premium sales thing, Navigator, or?
We have a nifty little tool. Like the one we're using is called In Touch. And, I've heard varied reports of people using these tools. We've had great success with it, where we just, we kind of do a search, we filter through and find these are people that I think really we would like to talk with and probably want to talk with us. And then it just sends out like a connection request with a little message that's really honest and says, hey, like, we're looking through the LinkedIn algorithm and brought us to you. Love to connect. And then it's just a follow-up message and I just want to see if there's I just want to hop on a chat and see if there's some way we can collaborate or whatever. Very low pressure, but it's working. We've just had a lot of really interesting conversations that way. And the thing is, we're all busy. So it's not like I can spend all day trying to find people and set this up. Like it's just the same with lunch clubs, the same thing. It's like, it does the matchmake. You hope it's good, but you know what? It's very low risk because there's very low time dedicated to it. Right.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing, right? Because I've always resisted it because it seems weird, but I don't mind to automate for scale. But I think you said it perfectly when you said, it's very honest. It's a short message. It's very honest. We were matched through an algorithm. Maybe there's something we could talk about.
Yeah.
I don't mind that, but I took screenshots from one of these things. It was like 4 different people, all with almost verbatim, word for word messaging on weird stuff. I'm going, I don't even know if I'm talking to a person or that person.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can see those like a mile away. We just like disconnect or whatever. But but that's the thing is we're all really busy, especially now you're working remote. How do you meet people and network and have some way to effectively do it and quickly and make it, so we've tried some ways and it works. And it's really like, we just have some great conversations. I've learned a ton from some of those conversations. I'll be honest, some of them turn to clients too. But that's not where we're going in. We're not hammering them, trying to sell them on stuff. It's them at the end kind of going, I want to know what you're doing. But it's like talked about everything else under the sun, right?
I think everyone's going to have to get used to this. Your house, your environment, talking to you on this screen.
Yeah.
right? That's where it's going to go. You're going to have to do that from here on out.
Yeah. And even as the even if the world kind of opens right back up, people have spent a year and a half and probably be 2-3 years of working from home a lot, working virtually a lot, talking with people this way. And it's not going to go back to where it was, not 100%, because there are a lot of benefits, right? Like, well, we can be like, you're in Texas, I'm in Alberta, and here we're chatting and recording a podcast and all this kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of things where it's been a real gift, right? And then, but then there's I do miss some of like being in person still. Like there's that will mix back in, but it just won't be 100%.
Well, being in person, there's a different energy. And I like to be in person where we're trying to solve a problem, right?
Yeah.
It's harder here. I mean, I like a whiteboard, I'm pointing over there because it's white. I like a whiteboard. I like a table. We've got all our evidence or whatever we need spread out, and we're just trying to come up with solutions. I can't do that as well with Zoom. But I don't mind these talks. I don't even mind sales calls anymore on Zoom. I've become more comfortable that way.
Yeah. And like our team's all remote, so we have to do a lot of that problem solving online, but we just have ways we've changed. Like we've started to integrate tools, and we do whiteboarding almost like on screen and with like quick like mock-up deck spreadsheet, whatever it is. It's not ideal, but but the team is like, we've got a great team. We can get them from anywhere, that's the balance on it, is we don't have to be in the same city, which is cool. But there are things that just aren't as good. And I know that now that, we're able to go out and that, probably 2 or 3 times a week going out and having those lunch or beer or coffee or whatever with people, because it's different when you're on a Zoom call. So often it's like, you got 30 minutes coming up on the hour. I got another meeting. Off they go, or off I go. Right.
Yeah.
When you're in person, it's like, yeah, you spent the first half an hour talking about like F1 or whatever, like something totally different. Like you're chatting and hanging out and all this stuff. And then you that is so important. Like, especially like you're circling back to that networking and developing those relationships. It can't be just this one little topic you're dealing with. That's where being in person and for an hour or a couple hours, at some dinner thing or whatever, that makes such a difference, because you're having conversations about a lot of things around businesses, not businesses. It's everything else.
All right. So let me summarize some of the key points that I took out of this is that, hey, everybody that you come in contact with, it could be part of your network. I mean, they could introduce you to something else, right? So, I mean, a network isn't just, a collection of customers. It's people around you, that can impact or help in some way, right? So, I mean, and none of that, you have to do it. You've got to be out there. You've got to ask for help when you need help. You have to shake your hand. You got to smile. You got to say, hey, I'm Mike. You have to do those things. But don't waste time in areas that aren't going to impact your business in a positive way. So, I mean, what would you take away from this?
You hit the big ones that I think are so critical. Like, talk with people, have to actively ask for introductions and sort of work that network a little bit. But like you said, smile, build relationship through common ground. Find that common ground and build rapport, not even relationship, build rapport with people through common ground and through not always the straight business, straight to the throat, build that rapport. And be consistent with it. Keep up with people, especially those ones you have a really good connection with. Keep up with them. And that can sometimes be the hardest thing. And what, if it's gone a year, don't be afraid to follow up and say, hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. Let's hop on a call, because there's a good chance they're like, yeah, that is a great idea. So it's, I think those are all really good tips that you kind of walk through there.
Yeah, right. All right. So this was episode 10. Again, correct. Congratulations. 10, man. I can't believe we did 10 already. Now, you've been listening to Nobody Told Me with Mike and Blaine. And believe it or not, that is our website. We went back on the fourth with that. Nobody told me with Mike and Blaine. No, it's just mikeandblaine.com, right? So it doesn't matter about the nobody told me. Our website is mikeandblaine.com. That's it.
I
right?
forgot about that. Yeah. And
I did too.
And I'm not even sure if we have anything up yet. Maybe by the time you're listening, we'll have something up. I can't remember, but no, you're right. This is a way better. mikeandblaine.com is way better than the long one. So that's a good, I'm glad you remembered what we did there.
No, I didn't remember. I had to look it up.
Nice.
So yeah, I had to look it up. So all right, so it's mikeandblaine.com. But hey, more importantly, if you are on YouTube or you're not on YouTube right now, go there, leave us some comments about what you think, what you're experiencing. If you want to hear anything else, if you got something that's on your mind that you want us to just talk about, or maybe you want to come on and talk with us, I'm okay with that too. Blaine?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, what the heck? I mean,
yeah.
Let's put something like that together. So if you're interested being on Nobody Told Me with Mike and Blaine, let us know on YouTube, or later on, it'll be on the website that we're going to create. So
for sure.
Number 10, Blaine, great one. Thanks to our almost sponsors, Freetail Brewing Company.
Yeah, the beer we bought and are promoting for like 88 Brewing. Give them a try.
There you go. But hey, another great one in the books. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time.
All right, thanks, Mike. It's been a good time.